Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kyle Appleford, and this is my presentation for VPSS Tier 2 English. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to focus strictly on American Romanticism and that literary time period, the way that American society shaped the literature that was produced during this time period, and some of the characters, and the one that I chose was Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. He's a classic hero, and some of the characteristics that he possessed that represented the time, and the fact that he was a classic hero that Herman Melville so masterfully created. Because I love Captain Ahab, he's a great character. And I think we can see a lot of ourselves in some of the things that we think and we believe in him, and some of our own flaws that we'd like to learn from. So the reason that this topic is going to be useful for you, if you're a teacher, if you're a student, or if you're just anybody just trying to learn more about literature, is the fact that the American Romantic movement was so important. It took society's ideals of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom to be who you want to be, and included that in the literature. That hadn't been done. There were many authors that were on the path, different forms of writing, but this was when finally authors stopped caring about other things and focused more on just deep inner emotions and what their characters were feeling and what they were feeling. They just put it in the writing, and that made for some great works. Secondly, I'm going to focus on the philosophical, religious, and political and ethical issues and things that were going on in society that shaped the literature that was produced during this time period. And finally, we're going to look at that character, Captain Ahab from Moby Dick, which was authored by Herman Melville in 1851. So this time period is between 1800 and roughly 1850, 1855. So due to the limited time that I have, 3 to 5 minutes, I would ask that if you had any questions or any comments, just put them, in the comment section below. That would be great. So firstly, I will summarize the literary time period of the American Romantic literary time period, American Romanticism. So this time period focused on, well, it originated in Europe, and then when it came to the United States, it focused on the fact that people wanted to express what they were feeling. And that seems like a simple concept, but when you really look at it, putting down your thoughts and your ideas and your deep in emotions on paper is tough. And you had authors finally expressing themselves, finally being allowed to just stop focusing on some of the bigger things, some of the bigger issues, political things, and just being who they want to be, and saying what they want to say, and not, worried about persecution. It focused on these deep emotions being kind of let out into the literature. It was the goal of most writers to get the reader to feel that emotion, not just read it, not just talk about it, but to feel it, to feel like they were living it. This time period also focused on the incorporation of fine art, music, and all these kinds of different things into the literature. And then you had characters who were heroic, who had these emotions, who were human. And it was nice to see these characters, someone that you could connect to. And it saw a direct connection between liberalism, that idea of change, that the government needs to change, society needs to change, and radicalism, that, we can't just keep doing the same old thing, and the same goes for the literature works that were produced at the time. So overall, if I had to summarize this literary time period, it would be all about change, emotion and change, putting that feeling into literature works. Focused on beauty, nature, surroundings, almost like that cliche stop and smelling the roses. Second, we're going to move on to the second point, which is the kind of the historical time period. And the key to understanding how this literary time period was shaped by society at the time is understanding this idea of nationalism. You have tons of people who are proud of their country at this point. It's developing a stronger sense of pride, the United States, standing up for itself, fighting for itself. And authors were not afraid to put their thoughts and their ideas on wars and ethical issues and moral issues, and just putting that in their writing. They weren't hiding anything anymore. So this historical time period saw a lot of political views in writing, talking bad about society and how it needs to change, and going against the norm. That's the key phrase, I would say, is going against that norm. So you saw radicalism, individualism, standing up for yourself, nationalism and pride in your country, going against the government, going against the man. And this is all a direct result of the Enlightenment. All these ideas were then put into literature. So this time period shaped what was American Romanticism and made for an awesome time in books and literature. And finally, we'll move on to the third point, which is about a hero that's embedded in one of the pieces of literature during that time. And I'm going to focus on Captain Ahab, which was in Moby Dick, Herman Melville's Moby Dick of 1851. And this is written right at the end of the American Romantic movement. And this book focuses on this character who is every bit of a hero. And the reason is because he's reckless and bold. And that's the best way to put it. He wants to do what he wants to do. He's got a deep emotion that carries him through that entire novel, which ultimately leads to his death. And he's bold, says what he wants, knows what he wants, goes after what he wants. He's not trying to be polite. He's not trying to hide anything. He's doing what he feels deep inside his heart, and that's totally in direct connection with that time period. And specifically, the reason why he is a hero is because he seeks out adventure. He looks for war. He looks for that danger. And then he leads to his own demise. He's the reason why he ends up dying. He's going after that whale constantly, will travel him across the globe, and then is the one that ends up killing himself on the ocean. He has a deep hatred and revenge. He's ruthless. So there's another characteristic which makes him that classic hero. And again, this time period was all about expressing oneself, and he does that. And he goes for what he wants, and he tries to take it. That's all for that point. So in conclusion, this presentation, my objective was to inform you on the Romantic literary time period in American history and all that it entailed. The literature and how it was affected by society, some of the characters, and some of the ideas. So we had American Romanticism and what it focused on: freedom of expression, arts, music incorporated in writing. How society at the time, going against the government, standing up for yourself, individualism and nationalism shaped literature of the time, and then looking at a specific hero from that time period who showed all these characteristics. I hope you found this presentation useful, interesting, and just flat out informative, because I really liked doing this research. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And that's the end of my presentation. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you listening. And hopefully we can spread this knowledge to our students in the classroom. Thank you.